Hello, everyone. This is Deborah Rue, and you're listening to or watching Human Potential at Work. As a reminder, I am the CEO of Rue Global Impact, and we work with companies all over the world and UN agencies and governments to make sure that people with disabilities are fully included and that we're focused on making sure that technology works for everybody. So today I have a guest that has been on the show many times. He's been on the show more than anybody else. His name is Doug Foresta, and he's my mentor. He's my producer, but he is also a show host of his own, and an author and a teacher and a professor and a clinical social worker. And I know I always say that title wrong, but we decided to come together today to talk about what we can both consider a very important topic. Are you going to be okay if? Are you going to be okay if your side doesn't win, for example, the United States presidency? Are you going to be okay if you're a Democrat and Biden and the Harris ticket don't win? Are you going to be okay if you're Republican, say you want the Trump Pence ticket to win? Are you going to be okay in every aspect of that word? We're going to just use that as an example, but are we going to be okay with each other? Because right now there's so much division going on, and just looking at this topic from my lens, for example, I have there are 5 of us children that grew up together, so that I have 4 siblings, and 2 of those siblings really want Trump to win, and 3 of the other 2 of my siblings really want Biden to win. And most people that know me probably can figure out where I am on that. That obviously I want Biden to win. And so let me just come right out and say that. But at the same time, are my sisters going to be okay if I'm happy? We've had a lot of talks about this, Doug, but first of all, let me just say, welcome to the program, Doug.
Thank you, Deborah. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. And
Yeah, I love your work.
listen, one thing's for sure, come November 4th, I'm hoping, because my other fear is that there isn't a clear winner, but come November 4th, half the country, if we look at the polls, about, half the country is going to be very disappointed.
Right. And also just to set some expectations, don't expect us to know on November 4th, as we all know.
Right.
It could possibly take weeks and weeks. And we have had these problems in the States before. I mean, I know Florida, which is my home state, even though I live in Virginia and I love Virginia, but often they could never, get their votes in a time, and they were confused. And we've seen these confusions, but now that we have COVID-19, the reality is it's probably going to be months, like you said. I mean, weeks, hopefully not months, but till we really know. So it just said it's, once again, everything's so different. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and the other piece about, are you going to be okay if, I think that, listen, the presidency is a very important, it's a very important election. However, I just voted 2 days ago in an early election for the primaries, and that primary was local Senate, local elections. Those people really matter too. So I think sometimes
Almost more,
almost more.
almost more.
Absolutely.
Because they're making decisions about your communities and
That's
your
right.
schools and your police officers and your nurses and your first line responders. And so I know we typically don't take those local elections seriously, but we really should.
That's right. That's right. They
Really
don't get as much. We don't get as sucked into them usually, but they're really important, and like you said, maybe even more important.
should.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and certainly I want, you know, the side that I'm supporting to win, but do I want to do it at the expense of my sisters being devastated? And also I think it's more important. One thing that I've tried to do, because I love my sisters, I've tried to understand their viewpoint. I've tried to understand, help me understand, because the reason why I don't like that candidate, and I'll just disclose it on air, I don't like a candidate that talks the way that particular candidate talked about women. I don't like watching that candidate make fun of openly of a person with cerebral palsy. I don't like There's so much I don't like about the administration, but I'm not naive. I do not think all of the problems that we're having in our country right now in the world are all because of one man. I think, there's a lot of stuff that's been, happening for a long time. And so I'm not naive enough to think, oh, if this side wins, it's all going to be soft. No, it's not. No, it's not. But I also think, and we've talked about this because I know you were, you're the father of two little girls and a son, and you had actually started getting out on Facebook and talking a little bit about your thoughts. And I want you to explain this, if you don't mind, to the audience. So I'm just going to set you up. I'm going to set up the
Sure.
conversation. But the response that you got at first, Doug, so when I'm talking when you first got involved and friends are like, that's it, I'm not your friend anymore, block me.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, actually, I just posted something the other day that some troll jumped on and started yelling. But, for the most part, actually, the stuff that I've been posting has really been about equity and really just pointing out inequalities and the work that we need to do. And to be honest, I think sometimes people jumped on that and thought that I was then endorsing a candidate, which I wasn't, or I was saying that all conservatives are racist,
Right.
which I wasn't. And I've tried to strike a tone. I mean, one of the things I really appreciate on social media is that I do have conservative friends. Like, I mean, I would say I'm more left leaning on the spectrum, right? But having said that, I just did a podcast with a woman who is an African American woman who is running for Congress as a Republican in California.
Cool.
And I think she's great. I think she's fantastic. And to be honest with you, in that particular election, because again, it's about local elections too, I think she probably will do more for her constituents than that incumbent who's been there, for years and years and years and is just comfortable with, he spends most of his time, just collecting more money for his next campaign.
He's on cruise control.
So yeah, I posted some stuff about equality, and I think the big thing is this idea of, are we going to be okay? I think that change is larger than any one presidential election.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, I have preferences, of course, about, who you'd like to see be president. But I also think that the changes that need to happen have to happen within our own hearts, and they have to happen across the nation. And like you said, to focus it all on one man and to say, this one man caused everything, right? Like, racism didn't exist in America before Donald Trump got into office, right? I mean, we know that during the 8 years that Obama was president, Trayvon Martin happened during Obama.
Oh yeah.
There were many of these problematic relationships, right, in communities between police and communities of color. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. It is historical. I think we're going to be okay regardless of what happens, because I think that we are, there is a movement that has really sustained momentum now over the last couple of months, and I don't see that going away. And I don't see America tolerating less equality. I think there'll be struggles. There's always, like you said, there's always stupid people that, or I shouldn't say stupid people, but people who make stupid comments. But I really,
I think some people like to stir it up.
They like to stir it up.
And I actually have a couple of friends, is too strong of a word. Over the last 4 years, there are two men that I really didn't like them. I didn't like their energy. I didn't like what they would say. I had, like, one of them was married to a woman that I really was a very dear friend. Luckily, she divorced him. And the other one was somebody I had a professional relationship with, but I don't like what they say. I don't like how they act. I just don't. And so when I started being very open about how I feel, I think I'm so naive, because I think the world works better when we all work together. Why would we discriminate against you because you're Jewish, Doug, or because I'm an older woman? Or so, and some of my things, they got very, very hostile. and I blocked both of them. And I don't use that block button. I don't use it very often, but I just thought, why are you friends with them on social media? You know, anyway. And I think also, Doug, I want to say this. I want to understand. Yesterday, I had two gentlemen come to my house because my hot water heater is going bad and I need
Oh no.
new pipes under my house, copper pipes. And both of these gentlemen, we started talking, and they both want Trump as president. And so they said, well, probably with your purple hair, you don't want Trump. But, they made some assumptions about me, which are true. And so I said, well, I mean, I don't want him, but I have very grounded reasons why. And so we actually had a really lovely conversation where we talked about it. But sometimes when I try to have these conversations with other of my friends,
Right.
they start just throwing sound bites out from Fox News to me, and I don't think that's a conversation. So what I really want to understand, and I've had some meaningful conversations with my sisters, I should really dig in even deeper, but at first what we tried to do was just not talk about it. It's like,
Yeah.
you disagree, I disagree, but I sort of want to learn. I'm a very curious person, so help me understand why you want this gentleman as president again. The boy, anyway, this man as president again. And I listened to the fears they have of the country. I listened to them saying the Democrats have cheated. The Democrats have not been good leaders, for example. And the Democrats did cheat. They did cheat last time. They gave Hillary the questions. Donna Brazile admitted giving her the questions, and she took the questions. And I don't think she needed to. Hillary's brilliant. She didn't need it, in advance.
Exactly.
And they were doing things against Bernie. And so they actually were caught cheating. So I'm not going to deny that, because I don't want to dishonor my sisters, but I want to understand why you're thinking. But I will tell you, Doug, we haven't really been able to have those deep conversations, which I seek. I have another friend of mine who he's very conservative Republican, and he chose not to vote for Trump. And what he actually did was he wrote in a candidate, but he did not want Hillary Clinton as president. And so we would have these really big fun debates. We would do it over dinner when we could eat dinner together, and we would have these just really grounded debates, and I always learned so much from him, and I loved him.
Yeah.
And I miss those. I miss conversations, because you don't have to agree with everything, but I can still love and care about you, Doug. But you said to me, this is how this conversation started. You said to me a couple of weeks ago, and I remember where I was on my porch, I was on the phone,
Oh, yeah.
and you said, no, Deborah, I have a feeling. Well, I'll let you tell the audience what you said to me,
Yeah.
but I know that when you said it, my stomach started hurting really bad. I had an immediate gut reaction to it. And so I'll let you tell the audience what you said to hurt me.
Well, it certainly wasn't my intention.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I just had this, sometimes I just get these like knowing, like the sense of knowing. And I had this sense of knowing that Trump was going to get another term, but also knowing that, that it was going to be okay, that things were going to be okay,
Right.
that the world wasn't
Right.
going to, come crashing down. And listen, I don't claim to be a psychic, so you have a 50%
And a
chance.
lot of psychics are saying you're wrong. I know.
Right, exactly. I was just sharing with you what came to me. I wasn't necessarily representing it as, and now that means that's going to happen. And,
Right.
I'm just saying, but I do think this, I think there's a difference between political and social. Now, social change often happens through politics, but a lot of politics becomes like, I'm a Red Sox fan, you're a Yankees fan, you're an Orioles fan, I'm a Mets fan. We hate each other because, what team are you on? Versus, uh, I really do believe that the vast majority of conservatives believe in equality. They
Right.
believe that you
I
should
do
have,
too.
I don't believe that most people who are conservatives think that, well, you know what? If you're born black, then you should just stay poor forever and never have any chances and be shot by the police.
Right.
I
Right.
don't believe that. Now, are there like extreme militia members who
On
maybe
both sides? Are there extremists
right.
on
And
both
there's probably
sides?
people on both sides you could find.
Hmm.
Exactly. So I don't believe that at all. And so I think what I'm excited about is that I think these social movements will continue regardless of who the candidate is. I think the pressures on politicians, because let's
Hmm.
be honest, Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton have changed their positions on many things because of the
They have.
pressures, because of social pressures, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I'm more. I think the thing that maybe unites us or can unite us is the idea of what do we want for our country. We should all be able to agree that we don't want to die of COVID. That we
Right.
want people to be
Right.
healthy. Like we're all human beings. Like
We
COVID
want our
doesn't care.
children to be educated.
Right. We want our
We,
children to be educated. There's a lot of things that I think we could find common ground on. We might
right.
disagree on how we get there or what policies, but to be honest with you, I also think that's a good debate. We have a two-party system. Do we
Right.
really want a one-party system? I mean, that's not,
I
some
want a
people.
three-party system, and
I think
that's
that's
what's
better
being
too.
predicted right now.
I agree.
It's being predicted that the Republican Party is going to split apart because it's interesting. I think of my friend who is a very proud Republican, and he doesn't recognize the party. And I'm just using his words. He's like, I don't. That's not really who he is. But it doesn't mean he wants to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I think also, can we be a little bit more empathetic and kind with each other? Because once again, somebody's
Okay.
going to be, when we hear who the new president, the president and vice president is,
Yeah.
whether we continue with the same or we go with a different one, there are going to be a lot of people that are disappointed. And so can
Yeah.
we
And
be
angry. And very
and
angry.
angry, and we're already seeing, well, there's horrible violence, horrible violence. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, and I can't, it's some of it we can't talk about because I actually, I just get emotional about it because I'm just so horrified
Yeah.
with what's happening. But can we not be smug? Can it's like, oh, well, can we stop saying all Republicans are racist, for
That's right.
example? Can we stop saying that all white people are bad? Can we
I
be a
know.
little bit kinder with each other? Can we be a little kinder to our allies? Can we,
Right.
all men are bad because of the way women have
Right.
been treated all this time? Well, no, that's not true. So how can we get a little bit more empathetic and compassionate with each other right now, Doug? And we're all under such great trauma
And
right
I
now.
think also, Deborah, I think one of the problems, I've been thinking about this a lot, when you think about empathy, which is really what we're talking about, is having empathy for others. And empathy comes from connection. It comes from looking people in the eye. Well, we get so much less chance to do that now, right? Because
Right,
of COVID. So
right,
I think there's also a real connection between the fact that we're often only interacting with each other via social media.
right.
And,
And
when
with
you
the
start to,
side that you agree with, too.
yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. I had one time I used to work in a small private practice in local in Massachusetts where I live, and I had a client who had road rage, and so he came to see me because of anger issues. And so it was a group practice. There was like 3 clinicians. So we lived like right. It was the office was right off this little tiny road, like a one-way road. And so he was driving to the office, and the guy in front of him like cut around him on this one-way road and then slowed down. So they're both of them are they're both like beeping and giving each other the finger and screaming out the window. Well, it turns out the other guy was also going for anger management, also at the clinic to see one of my colleagues. So they
Oh
they
my God,
reached
that's hysterical.
they reached there, and we're both not ready yet. So now there's this little tiny waiting room, and we had magazine, and they both like put the magazines over their face because you don't want, because it's one thing to do when you're driving past
Yeah, but
someone.
I'm seeing you face to face now.
Right. So you get what
Uh-oh.
I'm saying. I think there's a lot of that happens on social media.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I know that, when you're making these thoughtful posts, because you, like me, we want to be the light forward. I think there's a lot of us that want to be the light forward,
Yeah.
and so once again, I love my sisters, and my sisters are
Right.
amazing, amazing
Exactly.
people.
That's right.
And, you know, I love my nephew. My nephew doesn't agree with he has different political
Right.
thoughts than I do, but we can have a really nice grounded conversation. I love that about him. He's,
Yeah.
you know, younger than me. He's, you know, in his early 40s, you know, and we've had some really thoughtful conversations, and he'll come back and he'll say, yeah, Deborah, but y'all, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well,
Right.
and so we're able to have a conversation, and I still love him, and I still know I'm his favorite aunt. I probably been putting words in his mouth, but I mean, I love him. I love him, and he lives in Florida, and we can have a really nice debate about it because I want to understand.
That's right.
And but I worry so much about all of us because, like you said, there are going to be a whole lot of people that are disappointed. Now, of course, there's scary stuff. People are going to people are already being violent. They're already
Yeah,
being violent.
they are.
So,
Yeah, I mean, there's going
um,
to be. I think it's almost inevitable that there's going to be more social unrest around the elections.
yeah, yeah,
But you know that too
yeah,
is sort of part of the process of moving forward. And I just think that you know one way or the other. I always think it's a mistake also not to be able to acknowledge how are listen at least probably half the time in history, your party, whatever your party is not going to be the one in charge.
right,
Whether of we have different levels of government, so we have to find ways to influence, to have influence. Well, you can't influence people if you shut them out and demonize them.
right,
That's not how influence works. You have to have a relationship. And I'm very careful when I do post that I don't ever post. Like I don't, if you voted for that, woman
right,
molesting Cheeto head, you can
right,
go unfriend yourself right now.
right.
I don't think that that's
Even though I've
helpful.
seen those posts.
Oh, I've definitely seen those posts. I don't think that's helpful.
No, it really isn't
I,
helpful.
I really
It's
don't think
mean
that's helpful.
spirited.
It is mean spirited.
When we say things like Trump hates his children, he hates
Yeah,
Eric. I don't know why
right.
they like to pick on Eric. I
Yeah,
mean, I just don't know.
yeah,
I could educate myself, but I think it's
yeah,
wrong. I do not think. I don't.
yeah.
I mean, if
Or
I
Bette
just don't
Midler. I
like
mean,
that.
you saw what Bette Midler said about Melania, right? I mean, she
I missed
apologized.
that one.
Bette
Okay.
Midler called her an illegal alien who can't speak English well, and look at her, she can't even pronounce her words, and how long has she been in this country? Now, I know Bette Midler, was caught up in the moment, but she
Right.
apologized because she
Right.
realized that that's wrong.
Well, it doesn't
That's
help us. It just separates us more. And I love Bet. I love her work.
yeah,
And you know what? And I will be very honest. I often find that the Democrats are ineffective leaders. Now, I happen to be very impressed with Nancy Pelosi. I'm just very impressed with her personally, and I'm seeing more leadership. But at the same time, I do not think that either party is perfect, and I think that. I think that I'm very proud to be an American, and I think my
right,
sisters being American are just as valid as me.
right,
And you know, I just really worry about how mean and vicious we're being with each other, not just in the States, all over social media,
definitely.
and that people think that it's okay to just go and say the meanest, ugliest things. But I think the majority of us don't think that way. But I want to say something else to you, Doug, especially as somebody that is, you know, working with patients. Another thing that I think we all have to remember, and we've talked about it. We had an episode on grief last week, but people are traumatized. They're the losses. I was speaking, Doug, I was speaking to a woman that is an important person in our life that works with my daughter. And she's a professional in our life, but I'm just so fond of her. And she told me her mom got COVID-19, and she was in the hospital for 9 weeks. She almost died. Her nephew got COVID-19 here in Virginia. Her mom was in Florida, and he was
Yeah,
21, and he survived it, but he's going to have lifelong issues because of this. I had no idea this woman was
wow,
walking this path. You know, her daughter's in college, and she came home.
right,
Her son. So my point is, we are all walking trauma. And
yeah,
when somebody's rude to you in the grocery store and they accidentally bumps your cart, we need to be more empathetic and compassionate. I read that on average, people are speeding between 30 35 to 40 miles over the speed limit across the United States. People are traumatized. And
Right.
so, assuming sometimes when you see what you perceive as bad behavior, maybe it is bad behavior, you don't know what these people are walking behind the scenes. And we have to be empathetic because the losses are mounting up in ways that it's so chilling, and not just from COVID. You're seeing
Right.
suicides, violence to domestic abuse, police, and even I know we're talking a lot about the police, but there's a lot of really, really, really good police officers that are being abused and mistreated.
There are good police officers, and I don't support people throwing bricks at officers, or
Oh my God.
just to be clear, like that's and I've done a lot of work for years with addictions, and I the approach I always took was that it's not the person, it's their thinking.
Okay.
That so a lot of times I would try to you don't want to shame people into changing their behavior, but you or their thoughts, but you do want to when you're dealing with someone with addiction, I think addiction is a great example, is a great model for sort of, you know, you can love someone and also be clear that it's like if someone said to you, Deborah, someone you cared about said, why do they have to have this ADA thing? What do we have to have this? Just whatever, if you're in a wheelchair, just deal with it, right? Who cares? Now, there's a way in which you could still be kind to that person and yet still say, I get what you're saying. Let me see if I understand correctly what you're saying. And let me explain to you why it is important, right? Versus, you hate people with disabilities. You are a monster. You should die. I hope you end up in a wheelchair, you filthy lousy.
Right. And I'm blocking you. And I'm going to tell all my friends to block you. Oh
Right,
gosh.
right.
Yeah. I,
Like,
I, I think, we have to be a little bit kinder to each other.
yeah,
It's, I, what we were doing to people of the Muslim faith, the things that we say about each other, and racism and discrimination, it is not just in the United States.
no,
Anytime people get together, this happens. It feels like, in any society, there are these struggles. And I think sometimes we do have to see, sometimes things get so bad and you're like, okay, yeah, I really don't want it to be like
yeah,
that. I don't want for, I don't want to not speak to my sisters or my nephew or whatever, because they happen to believe something different from me and they have their reasons.
I know.
My job as somebody that loves them, I would think, is trying to understand, because maybe they're thinking about something I haven't considered. Yeah, I
That's right.
can learn from them.
That's right.
But when you do throw the sound bites at me and I can tell you're just getting your information from one source, and that's not,
It's
to me,
not
that's not
even
a
the most
conversation.
it's not the most interesting part of a person.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in throwing sound bites at somebody, and I'm not interested. I want to know who they are as a person, and I want to know. And it's just not that simple either. Coming back to like,
It's not.
I think I told you I have a dear friend that I reconnected with who was so important in my life, and she's African American, and she loves Trump, and she's a Trump supporter, and she's going to vote for Trump.
Right.
And
And I would love to talk to her and
I
just
know,
understand her
understand like what,
perspective, because
right?
there's, I assume pretty confidently she's not going to change my mind, but I
Yeah,
want to seek to understand. It doesn't
yeah.
mean she's a bad person.
She's
It
not a bad
doesn't mean
person,
she's
and
a
she
bad
helps
person.
a lot of people, and she cares about people, and she doesn't. She obviously she is black, so she doesn't want. She obviously doesn't want to live in a society where black people are oppressed. Um,
Correct?
we can disagree on things, and also, you know, I just think that yeah, we need more empathy, more kindness, more humility. Like
Yes.
for example, we could be wrong about things. Like that's the other piece that happens
It's
is
happened
people,
before.
right, we get so hardened into our positions about something to not then be open to, maybe there's another way to do something. It's like the masks, the masks became with COVID, like wear your
Right.
mask. you know okay, yes, clearly masks can help. However, the type of mask, what is a mask? I've seen people wearing underwear on their face. you know um, if we just get into this hardened argument about masks, we can lose the larger piece, which is, don't we want to try to eradicate this virus or try to live with it as best we can, or decrease deaths, and we're just fighting with each other about masks
I
work, no
know.
they don't,
And we're
yes they
just
do.
not, and we just don't hear each other. We
We don't
don't
hear
hear
each
each other at all. And I
other.
think that that's the point that I know that we wanted to talk about today.
Yeah,
We really do have to be kinder and more empathetic with each other and stop
yeah,
labeling people once again, because they're
yeah,
on, if you look at it, Republican, Democrat, there's so many ways, white, black,
yeah.
there's so many camps of how we discriminate against each
That's right.
other and we're mean to each other. But I think we need to be more empathetic. And once again, I believe that we need to give people just a little bit more leeway. What did I do? My mother, who's passed over, my mother was an aggressive driver. And if somebody cut her off,
Yeah,
if she would never let anybody yield in front of her, she would
yeah,
not let people merge. It was almost like she thought, and she had a mental illness, she had borderline personality disorder, but it was like they were taking something from her. And so when I get behind or in front of a driver like that, that's being aggressive with me, I just get out of their way, because I'm not going to play your game. And when it gets worse is when I'm going to play with you, like those two
right.
gentlemen you mentioned. You know, the other day somebody cut me off, and my daughter in the back seat shot him a bird, and I was like, first of all, I just thought it was so cute. I mean, her
Yeah,
anyway, but I was like, Sarah, and they didn't see it, but it was like, we really shouldn't respond that way. She's like, well, they shouldn't have cut you off,
yeah,
Mom. And I said, yeah, but you don't know, maybe they dropped something, maybe they were distracted, maybe
right.
what if, Doug, they didn't even mean to do
That's right.
that? What if they're not a vicious, horrible person for cutting me? It
That's
wasn't
right.
even that bad of a cutoff either. I didn't even have to hit my brakes. I just had to react a little.
Yeah.
Sometimes people aren't even thinking about you. So then you're
I'd
like,
say most of the time people aren't thinking about us.
right.
you know, I just want to say a quick thing too about, kindness and anger. So I think anger has its place. It's not that, because I'm aware that, like, it's easy for me. I'm a white man. Pretty comfortable in life. I'm not saying to people don't be angry, because I'm angry when we get angry when we see injustice. I think
Mhm.
that's part,
Yeah.
that anger is part of our compass. Someone told me recently that, Dr. Martin Luther King was a very angry person. That people said that, there's a misconception about him, that he was this, like, really,
Peaceful.
yeah, peaceful man who was always meditating, and that in fact he was very angry. He had a lot of anger, but he channeled it into peace.
Right.
And I think that's the piece that it's okay to be angry. I think the anger is information. When someone does something to us, or we watch something that's unjust, I think it's important to feel that anger, because it's like, if you were to, watch somebody, you've told me this before, how there was a speaker one time who was in a wheelchair and he couldn't get on the platform. So a couple of people just came without his permission and just lifted his wheelchair up and put him on there. If you're witnessing that, I think if you're not angry, there's something wrong with you, right? But then the question becomes, what do you do with that anger? And I think as human
Right.
beings, we can transform anger into love. We can transform anger into peace.
Yes, and that's such a good point, because the reality is, of course, we get angry. I mean, you're Jewish. I'm sure you've have a
Sure.
lot
Yeah,
of
watching some
complicated.
history,
Yeah,
watching, it's funny, just as I said anger, the skies opened up. So if you hear some rain, all of a sudden it started to.
that's funny. Yeah. Yeah, I think we just have, it just feels right now like we just need to leave a little bit more room for people to make mistakes,
I
because
agree.
people
I
are
agree.
terrified.
Yeah.
And I tried to watch the Republican National Convention, because once again I want to seek to understand, but there was so much anger and fear that I just couldn't handle it. And maybe I'm, naive, that I like hearing positive thing and hopeful things, but people are terrified, they're traumatized. We're all walking collective grief. It's every day I hear of a new loss, and and once again I'm walking dementia with my husband, which is a cruel disease,
That's right.
cruel disease.
That's
And
right.
and sometimes I'm so overwhelmed by it. and he's so overwhelmed by it. And sometimes I'm just have this great perspective, and I can think, okay, so he can't feed himself anymore, and he can't dress, and he can't but what's interesting is he still knows me. He still has a smart aleck sense of humor. He loves me. So the part of him that is my husband, he's still there.
Yeah.
But there are other things that he can't do. I mean,
Yeah.
a few things now. But and do I get angry that I don't want this to be the case. I
It would
don't
be
want my husband to have
right.
dementia.
Right.
But too bad. Too bad. And so then I find, little silver linings, like my husband is not in pain. This dementia that he's walking, it's not causing him pain. It's causing
Yeah.
frustration, blah, blah, blah. But he's not in pain. Like my friend, like my father who suffered that cancer, tortured him, and so I just think we have to make more room for each other and
I
each
agree.
other to have different opinions, and opinions that maybe you think are racist, but are they really? Or
Yeah.
do you need to seek to understand, who they are? Is every single person is a Democrat, hippie, tree loving, socialist, communist, and every Republican's racist and
Right.
come on, it's ridiculous. But we need to make more room for ourselves, for our loved ones. We need to make more room for people, just as they're living their lives during these extremely, extremely traumatic times. I know you're seeing it in your practice, Doug. What are you
I,
telling the people? What do you how do we
yeah, I
handle
mean,
this?
I think it's, to be kind to each other. I'll share with you real quick a story that came to my mind as you were saying that. Um, and then, we can wrap up with this, but, um, this idea of, anger and love, and that we always have a choice about what to do with our anger. After the, after World War II, and the formation of the state of Israel, the Mossad, which is the, secret, like basically like our CIA,
Okay.
uh, had formed basically a division to kill Nazis, who had not been caught by Nuremberg, and basically to have, to take out justice into their own hands, to get back at
Okay.
them. And one of those people, his family had been killed. A lot of his family had been killed in the Holocaust, and so he went back into Poland to find Nazis. Poland and Germany, post World War II, to find Nazis, and they would shoot them and kill them. And one day he was on the trail of one, and he found this one that was actually had become he had become a priest in a church. He had reimagined himself, and now had become a priest. And he followed him in the church with the intention of when he got a moment alone with him, he would kill him. And when he was in the church, this little girl came up to him and started talking to him. And what she saw, he had a long sleeve shirt on, but she saw the beginnings of the letters on his
Okay.
arm. And she started asking him, why do you have that? You know, and so he said, well, who are you? And she told him that she was a Jewish girl who had been hidden by
Okay.
the by people in Poland that were, hiding Jewish children, but her parents were killed, so she was an orphan. And she asked him, she said, is there anything you can do? She says, I know you're Jewish. Is there anything you can do for me? And in that moment, he was really frustrated, because he was like, this girl needs to get out of my way so I can go kill this guy, right? I need to get rid of this child so I can go kill this man. And so he thought about it in that moment, and he had a choice. Should I go kill this guy, and then I have to get the heck out of here, and I can never come back,
Right.
and I'll
Right.
never be able to do anything for this girl? Or do I give up the chance to kill this man and help this girl? And she said to him, what about the other ones? So there were other kids like her. And he made the decision. And he decided to take these kids, bring them to Israel, and create a home for kids who were orphaned in the Holocaust. And he spent the rest of his career doing that, you know.
Wow, what a beautiful story.
And
Yeah.
I just
How
think
are
we
you
always have a
helping?
choice. We always
Right.
have a
And
choice.
how are you really helping? Because
Yeah.
people are so traumatized, and
Right.
it's not going to help for
Right.
you to say that,
Yeah.
to make other people feel worse when we're all struggling so much.
That's right.
We're
You
struggling.
can't build a better world on hate.
Yeah.
You can't build a better
Yeah.
world by tearing other people down.
I agree. I agree. So I think we're all part of the human race and we got to
Yeah.
protect each other, protect our beautiful planet and give people some space to be who they want to be. We shouldn't be hurting each other, but let's be a little bit kinder. So
That's right.
Doug, thank you so much
Thank you,
for
Deborah.
all that you do. I just appreciate you so much. You're my mentor. I've learned so much from you. I know that you're doing some really amazing things too that I hope you'll talk about a little bit more on the air in the future,
Absolutely.
because I know I'm not the only one that's a fan of your work. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks.